Good morning everyone, and welcome to this week's webinar. In this webinar and also in next week's, we're going to be looking at the importance of sleep. In particular, we're going to be looking at the role that sleep plays in the formation of memories. We're going to look at what it is, how much sleep you should get, what happens if you don't get enough good quality sleep, and some facts that might surprise you about the sorts of things that disrupt sleep. We're going to look at some of the reasons why you may not be getting enough good quality sleep and what you can do about it, because it's so important to the consolidation of memories. You've heard me talk about the 3 keys to learning in the past. Key number 1, spend enough time with the information to allow your brain to make a pattern of it and send it to your long-term memory. Key number 2, make brain-friendly notes. Key number 3, revisit the information on a regular basis. You've never heard me talk about the 4th key to learning. I reckon the 4th key is all the other things that must be in place in order to have your brain work efficiently, and so getting good quality sleep would fall into the 4th key. Other things in this category that we've looked at before are exercise, diet, being sufficiently hydrated, having stress under control, and other things like that. So let's have a look at the importance of sleep. Healthy sleep. Numerous studies have indicated that adults spend about 1/3 of their time asleep. Obviously, that would be about 8 hours of sleep every day. Individuals vary a little in the time they need to spend asleep in order to feel well rested and in tip-top condition. The daily cycle of being awake and being asleep is called the circadian rhythm. Circadian means about a day. It's also called the biological clock. Hundreds of our bodily functions follow the biological clock. When living in windowless rooms, separated from the cycle of light and dark, without those external cues, people naturally settle into a pattern longer than 24 hours. In fact, their cycle is much closer to 25 hours. So if you've ever felt there aren't enough hours in the day, you'd be right. Humans are designed to do stuff during the day and to rest at night. We also have a natural slump of energy midday. This is, of course, siesta time, and many cultures allow for a rest in the middle of the day. Incidentally, many successful professional people do indeed take a very short nap at lunchtime, and they find they're full of energy for the rest of the day. The circadian cycle is reset every day by natural daylight entering the eye. Changes in season and exposure to artificial light can disrupt the pattern. Shift workers often find it difficult to sleep, as do blind people, both of whom aren't receiving daylight through their eyes. Shift workers commonly suffer insomnia. In a major survey, 55% of them reported at least one symptom of insomnia at least a few nights a week. Workers over the age of 50, people whose shifts keeps changing, and night shift workers are particularly vulnerable to insomnia. One study discovered that 53% of night shift workers fall asleep on the job at least once a week. It does rather imply that there's an internal body clock that doesn't adjust to unusual work times. They also have more car accidents and more health problems. A Japanese study reported that excessive computer work was also associated with difficulty sleeping. People juggling heavy responsibilities at work and those over-involved with their work have difficulty getting to sleep and tend to wake up early in the morning. I imagine that for most of us, running our own businesses and fretting about exams are a high risk factor for insomnia too. Sleep is connected It's it's a response to light signals, so it's connected to the day and night. The hypothalamus in the middle of the brain is known as the body's master clock, and a little cluster of nerves there are activated when light enters the eyes. As dusk approaches, this cluster of nerves signal to the pineal gland to produce melatonin. It's a hormone. Melatonin is believed to be the time-setting hormone for the body. The longer you work in darkness, then, the more melatonin is produced, and for a longer period of time. And this can be curtailed by staying in bright light right up till bedtime. Melatonin seems to be responsible for making us feel sleepy and allowing us to fall asleep. So you can see, can't you, that the fact that we have artificial light and we stay in bright light isn't giving the body the right signals to produce the melatonin to help us feel sleepy and ready for bed. It's no wonder our sleep's disrupted. Insomnia, then, is the inability to sleep. It comes from the Latin words for no sleep, and it can refer to difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, and also waking up too early in the morning. So, of course, insomnia causes drowsiness during the day. Also irritability and an under-par performance. I'm sure you can relate to it, I certainly can. Insomnia is sometimes the label given to teenagers whose circadian clock simply runs late. It's still reliable, but they fall asleep late and get out of bed late. In between times, they sleep normally. Maybe you've got teenagers. Sometimes older people suffer from insomnia. Very often they'll wake up early in the morning, something like 3 a.m, and then find themselves unable to go back to sleep and therefore extremely sleepy mid-morning. Actually, that happens to me a lot when I get jet-lagged. There's an ongoing debate about how much sleep we actually need. Maybe you've even joined in that debate yourself. Margaret Thatcher, the longest-serving Prime Minister, 1979 to 1990, was known to, well, obviously she's successful, but she was known to sleep for only 4 hours per night. Other successful people, Napoleon and Florence Nightingale, they also slept for about 4 hours a night, apparently, and Thomas Edison claimed that sleeping was a waste of time. I know of some people who have trained themselves to sleep 5 minutes every hour, and they report that eventually they get used to it. The world record for going without sleep was set by Randy Gardner in 1965. He stayed awake, wait for this, he stayed awake for 11 days. 4 days into that, he began to hallucinate. Then he began to suffer from delusions. He thought he was a famous footballer. However, he was functioning surprisingly well by the end, beating the sleep researchers at pinball. Because to a certain extent, the sleep patterns we have are formed from our habits. You know, if we keep going to bed late and keep getting up late, then it's dead easy to maintain that and keep doing it, and vice versa. But you know, all this is too early to know yet if there are any long-term effects from disrupting the usual, the standard sleeping pattern, sleeping at night, being awake during the day. Meanwhile, research is telling us that one night with insufficient sleep makes concentration much more difficult. Our attention span shortens enormously. And eventually, after a few nights of insufficient sleep, the part of the brain that controls language, memory, planning, and sense of time begins to shut down. Now, that's what we're more likely to experience, you and I, when we've burnt the candle at both ends, or we've had a particularly restless night. But did you realise that when we are suffering from lack of sleep, and we know it, we feel tired and things just don't seem to be going our way, the brain shuts down to a similar extent to that it does after drinking a couple of glasses of wine, and that's the legal driving limit in the UK. Studies tell us that driving while sleepy is as dangerous as driving while drunk. In a major 2003 study, 60% of young adults admitted to driving while sleepy, and 20% actually fell asleep while driving. It's scary, isn't it? I wouldn't want to be on the road while that happened. 1% of those adults in the study who fell asleep reported actually having an accident because of it. See, when you're tired, it's much more difficult to make rational judgments and to respond appropriately to situations around you. Lack of sleep has been connected with a number of international disasters such as Chernobyl, the Challenger shuttle explosion, 3 Mile Island and Exxon Valdez. It makes you think, doesn't it? And that's why when you've had a really busy day, that's why you're catching up on sleep. So if you find that you're sleeping more after a very busy day, it's because your body needs it, obviously. So how much sleep do we need? Well, teenagers need between 8.5 and 9.25 hours sleep every day. And you've probably noticed that when they get the chance, they do sleep for longer. Now, adults need 7 till 9 hours a day. 7 to 9 hours a day. Maybe that's more than you're expecting. I think our culture has encouraged us to burn the candle at both ends. I mean, just the fact that we've got artificial lighting and we've got computers and telephones and the ability to continue working late into the night, and many of us do when we're running our own businesses. I wonder how many of us are actually sleeping for a full 9 hours or even a full 8 hours. I bet instead most of us regularly go without anything like as much sleep as that. I bet many of us tell ourselves how busy we are. I bet we tell ourselves that work's getting in the way, then that needs to be done first, and that sleep will have to take a back seat for the moment. I bet that's the case. Many of us wouldn't want to admit that we didn't sleep very well the previous night because we were worried about a meeting with the manager or a particular tricky client. So we don't talk about it, and we ignore the problem of not sleeping very well until it becomes a much bigger issue. Incidentally, it turns out that people who sleep round about the 7 hours mark live longer than people who sleep less than that and people who sleep more than that. So if you're taking a lot more sleep, then it might be something that you will raise with the doctor. There might be a reason for that. So I mean, it's all very well catching up on sleep on the odd occasion when you've been overdoing it or something particular is going on in your life. But if you're finding that you're sleeping a lot, then very often that's something to do with stress. It doesn't have to be by any means. It might be something else going on. But I have noticed in some of my clients that one great way that the body automatically gets you away from a source of stress is to make you so sleepy you just simply can't be there anymore. You collapse, you go unconscious. It's a way of ignoring the source of stress. That's not the only reason why people sleep long hours, but it might be something worth checking out if you're finding that's relevant for you. Right, so don't ignore the sleep situation. There are differences between us, women and men. Probably, we were just talking about sleeping 7 or 8 hours or more. Probably only 35% or so adults do that. And the remainder are thought to have at least one symptom of insomnia a few times every week. And women, we were talking about the differences, women are more prone to that. It might be the way that the brain is wired to take care of the family, the home. It might be to do with hormones disrupting the sleep pattern. Moving on to teenagers for a moment, it's reckoned that 60% or so are tired during the day. I wonder if, while teenagers need more sleep, whether they're getting distracted by Facebook and the sorts of things that they get up to. in their bedrooms now that they've got all these gadgets that they can play with. A major study reported that between the age of 16 to 50, men lose about 80% of the time they spend in deep sleep. So between 16 and 50, men are tending towards more light sleep and less deep sleep. Apparently the REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep, doesn't change. And in any case, both women and men find that the quality of sleep deteriorates very often as we all get older. As we get older, our sleep patterns change. And if you're running your own business and you're burning the candle at both ends, and you have stressful days, then the fact that as we're getting older, our sleep patterns are beginning to change anyway is likely to exacerbate the situation. In a major survey in 2003, it was discovered that a third of older people wake up many times during the night. About a quarter of them said they wake up too early and can't go back to sleep. About a third of adults between the age of 55 and 64 said they were still tired when they woke up. Several factors are likely to contribute to this disturbed sleep patterns of older people. As we get older, we're likely to get less active. Medical conditions can cause pain and distress and make it difficult to sleep. The side effects of some prescription drugs include insomnia. Older people are also more likely to suffer grief, depression and anxiety, all of which impact on sleep. My mother-in-law was bereaved twice last month. My mum went to a funeral yesterday. You know, as we get older, that's going to happen more and more, and all of that plays on our mind. One study suggested that grief, depression and anxiety were a bigger cause of insomnia than illness, medication or living conditions. Also, melatonin levels tend to decrease as we get older. But that again might be because older people don't spend so much time outdoors. And you know already that disrupts the production of the melatonin hormone. We reckon that on the whole, something like 20 to 30% of people have difficulty sleeping at any one time. Insomnia makes you stupid. Sleep deprivation has a negative impact on our performance. Studies indicate that it's hard to concentrate and perform tasks. We know that already, don't we? Concentration is reduced, and the ability to process information is marred severely. Some studies have suggested that the ability to memorize information is impaired. And while stress and depression can themselves cause insomnia, insomnia is thought to increase the activity of hormones and the pathways to the brain producing emotional problems. So insomnia over time can create emotional disorders. And you really wouldn't want to leave it if you begin to think you have a sleep issue. Insomnia will give you a heart attack. So physically the news isn't good either. While the jury is out, some research links insomnia with heart disease. However, other research finds no such link. But because insomnia can lead to depression, and because depression is a risk factor for heart attacks, not getting enough sleep really can be a killer. Insomnia makes you fat. You may have heard recently that it's now known that sleeplessness can ultimately cause weight gain and obesity. There's been a lot about that in the news over the last year or so. A 16-year study of 68,000 women reported that those who slept for 5 hours or fewer were 32% more likely to gain at least 33 pounds. I mean, those numbers are staggering. Those who slept 6 hours had a 12% increase in weight gain compared to women who slept at least 7 hours a night. In a 2002 study of over 1 million people, it reported that people who slept 7 hours lived the longest. I mentioned that earlier. People who slept more than 8 hours or fewer than 6, or who took sleeping pills, had lower survival rates. You definitely want to be aiming for 7 to 8 hours sleep. If you're sleeping regularly more than that, and there's somebody on the call now who has been asking about this, then maybe it would be time to go and speak to somebody about it. Just get a second opinion from a medical professional. The Epworth Sleepiness Scale measures, guess what? Sleepiness. It's designed to help people work out just how tired they are in a variety of situations. So this might be useful for the member who's listening in, who's sleeping a lot. This might be useful for you as more information you can take if you go to see the doctor. Now, it looks like this. Let's go through the questions, and as we do, why don't you jot down your scores, because we're going to add them up at the end to discover if you're getting enough sleep, good quality sleep or not. You don't have to tell me how you score, but it might well be a useful process for you. So look, the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. So as we go through, score yourself. So you give yourself a 0 if there's no chance of you dozing in that circumstance, and you give yourself a 3 if there's a very good chance of you dozing off in those circumstances, and you can rate it in between. Okay, so here we go. Here are the questions. Let's mark down 0 to 3 how likely you are in these situations to fall asleep. So first of all, sitting and reading. How likely are you at the moment, this week, to doze off while you're doing that? For me at the moment, there's a very high chance. I've been going without enough sleep for a little while now, so I'm going to give myself a 3 for that. That's not usual, by the way, but for this week, that's definitely where I am. How about watching TV? Are you likely to doze off watching TV? My husband does. I never do. I get engaged with what's going on. What score do you give yourself for watching TV? How about sitting inactive in a public place? In a theatre or at a meeting? That's not necessarily going to do your reputation a lot of good, but I have known people doze off in meetings and we've had to nudge them awake. What about as a passenger in a car for an hour without a break? I'm going to give myself a 2 for that for the moment. Depends whether I get into conversation with somebody or whether I'm really tired. Right now I'm really tired. So how about the next one? Lying down to rest in the afternoon when circumstances permit. Well, I'm going to go for a 3 on that one. There's no way that I'm going to survive that. So best stay upright today, I think. Lying down to rest in the afternoon when circumstances permit. How likely are you to doze off? How about sitting and talking to someone? Ooh, dear me. Might you fall asleep while you're sitting and talking to someone? Mark yourself on that. And the next one. Sitting quietly after lunch without alcohol. So you haven't had alcohol at lunchtime, but you're sitting quietly after lunch. How likely are you to nod off then? And how about in a car while stopped for a few minutes in traffic? Maybe you're at the traffic lights. What are the chances of you dozing off for a second or two there? Okay, now add up your scores. Have you added them up? I've added mine up. And here's what the Epworth Sleepiness Scale suggests for you. So, how did you do? You don't have to tell me, but just have a look at it for yourself. Now, I've scored a massive 12, very sleepy and should seek medical advice. I'm not going to seek medical advice today. I know exactly why I'm sleepy. There's a lot going on, but I do know that this morning was my last early get-up for at least 2 days, possibly 3 days. So I know that I can take responsibility for my situation and take care of myself. But I know that I'm sleepy and I'm going to take very special care when I pop out in the car today. I'm going to be responsible about it. If I thought this was going to be a problem and I was going to continue to not get enough sleep, I would really have to look very, very hard at my lifestyle and take some massive action. Now, if it's not about lifestyle that you can change easily, if there's something else going on, maybe stress, then whatever the situation, go and get help. Don't do nothing about it. It's very, very dangerous to let it go unattended. So, I have some suggestions for the sorts of things that you can do if you find that you're not getting enough good quality sleep. However, as you can see, we're beginning to run out of time now, and I think it might be more sensible to leave that till next week. In the meantime, you might just have a think about your lifestyle, how you're organising yourself, how sleepy or otherwise. Maybe you're in tip-top condition and this doesn't apply, but I bet if you're running your own business, if you've got clients to attend to, if you're revising for exams, I bet there are times when you are trying to cram too much in to your day. In which case, what you could do between this week and next week is have a look at exactly what is going on. So next week when I make some suggestions, you can start using some of that information and changing things. So let's leave it there for this week. Have a look at your answers to the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. Decide if you could improve on the quality of sleep you're getting. If you think you can, then make a note of that for next week and we'll see how we get on. Just bear in mind that the first thing to try that works for 75% of people who are struggling to sleep, one thing that does work, you might want to try this week, is to only lie down when you're sleepy. If you've gone to bed and you find that 20 or 30 minutes later you're not asleep, get up. Get up and go and do something. And then lie down again when you're sleepy. And just keep doing that. And it might be a pain in the neck, and it might be something that you have to do a few times. But apparently for 75% of people, if you just keep doing that, you lie down when you feel sleepy, if you're there 20 or 30 minutes later, just get up and go and do something else, then that's most of the equation. The other part of the equation is get up at the same time every morning, even through the weekend. So the bit that's variable is what time you go to bed at night. The bit that stays the same is the time you get up in the morning. And for 75% of people, that eventually works. And as I said, it might be a pain in the neck, but so is lying in bed and worrying about it. And one thing we do know about people who don't sleep very well is they'll tell you they've tried everything. That's the one thing they've got in common. Oh, I've tried everything. I think it's a question of habit, a question of teaching your unconscious mind where you do what. And if you think about all the disruptions we give to our natural body processes, you might have to do a little bit of, you might have to be patient and to just keep hammering the point home. You lie down when you feel sleepy, you get up 20 or 30 minutes later if you haven't fallen asleep, and you get up at the same time every morning. You might want to try that this week. So we can try some other things next week. So getting a better quality of sleep and sleeping for longer than most of us are sleeping, with the exception of the member who is obviously sleeping far more than most of us already and has a different challenge there. But for most of us, getting more sleep will impact positively on our state of mind, our relationships, and our effectiveness, and particularly our ability to form new memories when revising. What's the point of spending time revising if we're undermining our attempts by not paying attention to the quality of sleep? You now know that sleeping is part of the memory consolidation process. And that's what we'll be looking at next week. How memories are made, why sleep is so important to the process of memory consolidation. In other words, allowing new information to go to your long-term memory where you need it for the exam. And we'll be looking at what to do if you're not getting enough sleep. So, have a good week. Oh, by the way, next week is one of those odd occasions where I won't be able to deliver the webinar live. So I will create it for you, I will record it, and it will be up on the website for Friday morning. Okay? And then we're back to the usual routine after that. So have a good week. Bye-bye.